Hey everybody, this is Susie from the Morgan Library, and I'm here today for a very special episode of Crafti, and it's special for two reasons. One is, if you were alive in the 80s or 90s, you know what this is. This is a scrunchie. It's meant to hold back your hair, but it could also be a bracelet or something to hold your pins together. They're very, very useful. They also end up being cat and dog toys. The other reason, and they're back in style, so everybody wants to have a scrunchie these days that matches their outfit. The other reason this is a very special episode is because today I am joined by Alicia Bailey Walton, who is also from the Morgan Library here, and she has never sewn before. And so today I'm going to teach her how to make this, which should prove to everyone that you can do this. You can make this. It's a very simple craft and something that anybody can do. You do need some supplies, and it does help if you know how to use a machine, but even if you don't know how to use a machine, we're going to show you some tips on how to do that today. So, without further ado, we're going to get started, and these will be the supplies you will need for this project. So you want to dig through your strips and pick the ones that you would like to turn into a scrunchie. Hopefully you have a big collection like I did. Just pick the patterns and the styles that you will enjoy wearing. First thing you want to do is fold the end of your strip down about 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch. Doesn't really matter, but you do want to fold it down and sort of finger press it down, and you're ultimately going to be sewing down this end of the strip to kind of create a finished edge on your scrunchie. So you sew down, you can use a 1/4 inch seam allowance, you can use 1/8 of an inch. You just want to make sure that you are sewing your strip down. And here is Alicia on the machine showing her newly discovered machine skills. And also make sure that you backstitch a couple times. You just want to make sure that you reinforce your stitching as you're going, because scrunchies do get used heavily. They get stretched and pulled every which way. So just make sure that you reinforce your stitching using backstitching and stitch over it a couple times if you need to. So then you're going to fold your strip long ways, and you're going to create the tube that will become the scrunchie. You can pin this in place, you can clip it in place, but you ultimately want to sew down the edge of the strip, also using either a 1/4 inch or a 1/8 of an inch seam allowance, whatever you feel comfortable with. Also, if you go crooked and it goes a little wonky, it's perfectly fine, because when a scrunchie is scrunched, you're not going to know that it's crooked. And this is another instance where you can choose to use clips or pins if you want to. If you're not very comfortable using the machine and you feel like your fabric is going to slip, go ahead and reinforce it as you're sewing. Again, make sure that you use your back stitching, and you can go back and forth multiple times. If you go crooked, it's not the end of the world, just fix it. And then you can also go back over it once you've straight stitched down the side with a zigzag stitch if you choose to. You could even use a decorative stitch if you choose to. It would just help to reinforce the scrunchie, but it is not 100% necessary. If you do go off track like she did here, don't worry about it. Just get right back on track and sew down the rest of your strip to create your tube. Make sure you backstitch at the end. Alright, so then you're going to insert your safety clip, not paper clip, at the end, and you're going to put it inside, turning your tube slightly. This part is a little tricky, so you want to make sure that you are feeding your safety pin through the tube. This is going to turn it the correct way out. If you have little fingers, big fingers, it doesn't matter. This is tricky no matter what size your hands are. So just work at it, kind of feed your safety pin through, pulling from the back as you go, as you can see here. That sort of is pulling the end through the body of the tube. And eventually you're going to work it out. You might have some bunches that you got to work out. It's going to be fine. There's going to be a magical moment where all of a sudden it flips through and there's no resistance at all, and it's wonderful, but you can get a little frustrated with the process leading up to that. So just work it through. Make sure that your safety pin does not come out of its safety sheath, because that will poke you through the scrunchie, and that's not good to bleed on your new scrunchie. So here we go. Here is the end of the scrunchie, and you can see she's got a little bunching there, but she just works at it, pulls at it, and there we go. We get our wonderful scrunchie tube, which we are going to clean up any excess thread. Once you've created your tube, you're going to want to pull out your elastic and figure out how big you want to make your scrunchie. If you have really thick hair, you want a longer piece because you're going to need it to go around your hair, plus maybe wrap around. If you have really thin hair or not much hair, you can go with a smaller piece. Here what I'm doing is sort of taking a piece of elastic, adding in enough elastic to tie a knot, and then seeing if that stretch will go over your hair. And then I measure it and see the exact length, and then I can use either the piece of elastic that I cut or that measurement to create additional scrunchies that size. Here I am using 1/4 of an inch elastic. You can also use 1/8 of an inch elastic or even thinner, but you won't get as good a stretch, or you'll get more of a stretch if you use thicker. Then you want to put your elastic on a safety pin and feed it through your scrunchie tube. This is not as difficult as turning the tube inside out, but it does require a little bit of delicate handwork. You want to make sure that as you're feeding your safety pin with your elastic attached through, that you hold on firm to one end of the elastic. You don't want that elastic going into the tube because you will lose it and you'll have to dig it back out. So hold on one tight to one end and feed your safety pin through, and then squeeze it very tight like the elastic all on one end as we're doing in the picture, and then take off your safety pin and tie your elastic in a knot. I suggest a classic pretzel knot. If you need to see a picture of that, we can pop one up here, and then I would double or triple or quadruple that. Like, just, you want to make sure that it stays nice in place because it takes a lot of stress. Once you've tied your knot, and this is a little bit tricky, you want to fit the end, the unfinished end of your scrunchie underneath the finished end. The finished end is the part that we bent under and sewed at the very beginning. So basically what you're doing is you're hiding that rough end to the tube that you've created. So you find your rough end, tuck it into the good end, make sure that you have it inside enough that when you sew down to secure it, that you're catching both ends, like you're closing one end and you're attaching the rough end. And then you're going to sew the line down, and you can sew back and forth multiple times. Again, scrunchies take a lot of wear and tear, so you want to make sure that this is very secure. Backstitch multiple times if needed. You can use a decorative stitch if you want to. Thread color is another thing to consider. You want to try and hide this stitch as much as possible, because if you're going back and forth multiple times, you don't want to see that thread. If it's a black scrunchie, you don't want to see a white thread on your scrunchie, but if you don't have anything else, that's fine. So here we have a stack of finished scrunchies, and these of course are in different fabric colors and patterns. You can choose to use cotton fabric, you can use velvet or satin and play with it and match your outfits, and it's pretty fun. You can be kind of creative with this. I hope you've enjoyed this presentation. I hope it was useful to you and you are able to use these instructions to create a scrunchie yourself, even if you have very little or no sewing skills. If you have any questions or you want to peruse our quilting and sewing and crafting books here at the library, just get in touch with us and have a lovely day.